episode, and last week we ended it. And today's chapter, we are going to look at reforming Ghana's 1992 constitution for a new era. That is exactly what we are going to do. We want to see how best we can reform our 92 constitution to not only for the purposes of reforming it, but also to ensure that we are safeguarding our democracy, we are safeguarding our fourth republic, because that is all that we have, as always. So we won't waste much time on other things. We are looking at today's topic being reforming Ghana's 1992 constitution for a new era. There are three facts I want us to look at. The first one is taken from Article 1(2) of our 1992 constitution, which tells us that the constitution is the supreme law of Ghana. In other words, any other law that is inconsistent with it shall be void to the extent of the inconsistencies. The second fact we need to know is that of Article 3(3), which reminds all of us or tells all of us that any person who, by himself or herself, or in consent with others, by any violent or other unlawful means, suspends or overthrows or abrogates the 92 Constitution, commits the offense of high treason, and shall, on conviction, be sentenced to suffer death. That's the second fact, or the second thing we need to know. The third fact is that all citizens of Ghana have the right and duty at all times to defend the Constitution, and in particular to resist any person or group of persons seeking to commit any of the acts that unlawfully suspends or overthrows or abrogates the Constitution. So if you look at these three facts, it tells us one thing, that the effect of all the above is that any changes to any single provision of the Constitution must be lawful. In other words, if it is done unlawfully, you yourself, you have committed a crime. And so if you are looking at the Constitution, amending it, then we have to focus a bit more on how to go about it. In other words, the procedures involved. There are two procedures which have been provided to us by the Constitution itself. The first one is an Act of Parliament, and this is done for non-entrenched provisions. The second one is the referendum or true referendum, and that is for entrenched provisions. So these are the two ways by which we can reform our Constitution. If you remember, we had what we call the Constitutional Review Commission, and that took place under the late President, His Excellency Atta Mills. We spent just about $6 million for them to review our Constitution. And this is how they went about it, using the desk review, research, consultations, clause-by-clause review, drafting, further consultations, finalization of draft, technical drafting, editing, comprehensive advice on amendment procedures, and then they finally submitted their report. If you have the chance of going through the report, there has been an amendment to almost all aspects of the Constitution. But for the purposes of this evening, we are going to look at three areas of interest. The first one has to do with Article 71 holders, and the recommendations that were given by the Commission was that the emoluments of Article 71 holders must be determined pursuant to a predetermined formula. Currently, that is not what it is. People who are Article 71 holders, they go into employment without the state telling them ab initio how much they are going to earn. And so they go into it, and then after, the state constitutes a committee and determines how much they should be paid. I don't think that is the right thing for anyone to do. So this is how they came up with, the recommendations, that there should be a formula for it. Now, the other thing that they came up with was that the formula must be set by an independent emolument committee, and the composition of it includes Public Service Commission or reps from Public Service Commission, Trades Union Congress, Ministry responsible for Finance, Audit Service, Fair Wages, and Salaries Commission. And then it goes on. The other one is that the mandate of this IEC, that is the Independent Emolument Committee, shall be to prescribe an emolument formula for the emolument of Article 71 holders. The intention is that this will avoid the continuous setting of committees to determine the emolument of Article 71 holders, which in itself is another charge on the public purse. Because when we constitute a committee for them to determine how much these 71 holders should be paid, they are working we are supposed to pay them. So it becomes an additional debt on the public purse. The second area of interest has to do with the National Development Planning Commission. And this is of interest because I have said it continuously, that one basic problem affecting us as a country is the fact that we end up pursuing political parties' agenda and not Ghana or national agenda. In other words, we get into office, or we have political parties that comes into office, and instead of them having or pursuing a national agenda, they end up pursuing a political party's manifesto. And that is what contributes to the stagnation of our development as a nation. So these are the recommendations that he came up with, that the NDPC must be independent de facto, and the composition must also be looked at. And so it goes further to say that we should review the composition to include representatives, each from civil society organizations or political parties that have attained at least 5% votes in national elections, University Teachers Associations of Ghana, that's the public universities, Private University Teachers Association, Technical Universities Trade Union Congress, 2 reps from National House of Chiefs, Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations, private sector, minister responsible for finance, Governor, Bank of Ghana, the Statistician General, 1 regional planning officer from each of the 16 regions that we have, and then such other persons not exceeding 5, as may be appointed by the President, having regard to their knowledge and experience of the relevant areas and roles pertaining to development, economic, social, environmental, and spatial planning. So these are the proposals that has been given. And it goes further to talk about the reason for this formula, the reason for this proposal. The body will nominate their reps who must have relevant expertise. And what is important to me is that the NDPC, per the report's proposal, is that they are supposed to revise the National Development Plan every 10 years or such earlier period as may be approved by Parliament by 2/3 majority of all members of Parliament. So in other words, this will find a way of binding successive governments. And so instead of us changing governments every 4 years or 8 years and then being at the mercies of the government or the political parties' manifestos, we will have, through this proposal, bind those governments to commit to the National Development Plan that has Ghana's interests at heart. So we also look at monitor, evaluate, and coordinate development policies, programs, projects, and submit an annual report to Parliament. So that is the second area. Then the third area, or area of interest that we are looking at, and I believe this is an area that a lot of people are so passionate about, and that has to do with the executive powers. Chapter 8 of the 1992 Constitution, where the Constitution gives so much powers. First, it produces an executive president, and it gives the power, extensive powers of appointment. And that obviously leads to what we always see manifesting in the form of winner-takes-all politics that we have in this country. And so if you don't belong to the government of the day, it simply means that irrespective of your expertise and your background, you are not part of helping to build a better country for us. And the powers that has been given at the, maybe we can just go back to go through the powers that has been given. So these are the articles. We have Article 71, Article 86.2, Article 185.3, Article 72, Article 78.1, Article 862, Article 89.2, 1162, 741, 1834, 1891, 232, 144, 89, and then Article 158. These are all powers given to the president in the 92 Constitution when it comes to appointments. Some of the offices that these powers mandate the president to appoint Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice and the deputies, appoint the Auditor General, appoint the District Assembly's Common Fund Administrator, Chairman and other members of the Public Services Commission, Lands Commission, governing bodies of public corporations, National Council for Higher Education, persons to represent Ghana abroad, talking about ambassadors and all that you can think of, chairpersons of the National Development Planning Commission, Governor of the Bank of Ghana, government statistician, And it goes on. The list goes on and on. Chairman and 4 other members of the Audit Service, Chairperson, 2 deputies, and other members of the Electoral Commission, Ministers of State, Deputy Ministers of State, Chief Justice, other Supreme Court Justice, members of the National Development Planning Commission, not just the chairperson, but the members also, 11 other members of the Council of State, 4 persons who are not lawyers to serve on the Judicial Council, 2 persons to serve as members of the National Media Commission. The list goes on and on and on and on. So clearly, these are the powers that has been given. And that's what we are going to look at today in reforming the 1992 Constitution. And as always, you can get interactive with us. The question we are posing, for which we are soliciting your views, your comments, your questions, and any other thing that you think will be of relevance to this conversation is, what do you want to see amended in the 1992 Constitution? That is a very important question. What do you, as citizens, want to see amended in the 1992 Constitution? And so, as I indicated earlier, for some few technical challenges, our WhatsApp line for this evening's episode has changed. And so take notice of it. And that is, we are now using 055-699-9999 as we have it on the screen. We are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to introduce to you our August guests to help us, discuss this topic. Just stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome to AutoCheck Vehicle Diagnostic and Licensing Center.
I hear my car can be checked here without going to Accra.
Sure.
Emission, check.
Alignment, check.
Brakes, check.
Visit AutoChecks at Koforodia Aquadum Road for the roadworthiness of your vehicle, from saloon cars to heavy-duty industrial vehicles. Madam, your car is now ready for the road.
Thank you so much. Auto checks, check.
AutoChecks, your safety, our priority.
Auto checks.
The average human body mass should have at least 60% water for optimal performance in any physical or mental exercise. We can help you maintain it naturally. Natural mineral water. Simply natural. For bulk purchase, call 0596 273 546 or 0596 273 547. This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back to your transformative program, Politics and Beyond, with your host, Emmanuel Wilson Jr. Today, and as we've always been doing, we bring you guests that are experts in the field that we discuss. And the intention and the purpose is for us to be educated and for us to also get some insightful knowledge, as I indicated, for the purposes of orienting our minds and orienting what we need in making the right decisions come 7th of December 2024. This is a man I have known for a while. I mean, I've known him. He's a brother. And I mean, in describing him, I want to read, because when I posted his flyer, this is how someone described him, even before now. And he says, Dr. Daniel Appiah. This is a man of integrity and character. He's a public sector reforms expert and good governance advocate. And this came from a gentleman, I think I got the name, Fahan Seidu. I believe I got the name right. So yes, I mean, that is it. We are going to have a discussion with Dr. Daniel Appiah. He's a lecturer with the University of Ghana. He is indeed an expert when it comes to good governance and public sector reform. Doc, welcome to Politics and Beyond. I'm happy to have you.
Thank you very much.
And I hope you had a good day.
It's been a good day.
Great.
I finished writing my examination. I'm doing another master's degree program.
Really?
In counseling. So when I finished there, I had to rush.
You have to rush here. We are so privileged.
Yeah,
we are so privileged to have you.
Yeah.
Doc, just this week, in fact, we discussed it because you also brought it to my attention. If you look at the EIU reports and the Afrobarometer report that came, 2023, the statistics tells us something which is worrying, and that is Ghana's democracy is deteriorating. It is descending, instead of it ascending. In other words, majority of Ghanaians are losing confidence and hope in Ghana's democracy. Just like we went through the first fact, the backbone of Ghana's democracy has to do with our 1992 constitution. And so if there's an issue with our democracy, then the first point of call should be the 92 constitution. Tell our viewers, what do you think after, practicing the 92 constitution for a little over 30 years now, what do you think is wrong with our constitution?
Thank you very much, and good evening to our listeners.
So,
there are many things wrong with our 1992 constitution. I mean, in the first place, the 1992 constitution was made to kind of ensure political stability. I mean, there we had a Jerry Rawlings regime, a military regime, and citizens were not happy. I mean, wanted to get out and rid of Jerry Rawlings. And so there was the bargaining to transition the country to a democratic regime. And so the constitution that was made for the regime to contain Rawlings and to give him adequate or enough powers to assure him that coming from a military regime, he hasn't lost much. All is still well, and gradually we will be able to reform the constitution as we move along. And we've practiced the constitution for 30 years now. And it is not just only me or you who thinks that there's something wrong with the constitution, but just let me go through a bit of those who also agree that there is something wrong with the constitution. The majority leader, Honorable Oseche Mensah Bonsu, has made a call that we need a constitution that frowns on winner takes all syndrome. This was last year, February 2023. And then he has been championing that we should revisit the 1992 constitution and reform it. And then we recently also heard from our vice president, Dr. Muhammadu Bawumia, also say that if he gets the nod to become president, he will commit to constitutional review, meaning that he has identified something that is wrong with the constitution. And then we've also heard from our president, Nana Addo Dankwa-Akufo-Addo, who also agreed with Dr. Pakwesi Ndoum some time ago that there was the need to have an independent Attorney General Department. And then we also saw the effort by Nana Addo Dankwa-Akufo-Addo, our president, to try to also initiate a constitutional amendment for the election of the MMDCEs. And we've also heard from now former President Mahama, who also agrees with former President J. Kufuor that there is a need to also change the tenure of office from 4 years to 5 years, because the 4 years is not suitable for a developing country. So we've heard from all these honorable, distinguished statesmen pointing to some things that are wrong in the constitution and calling for a constitutional review. So it is not just only me who says our constitution is not good. It is not only the Constitutional Review Commission, that's a former commission who have identified or who identify many things, but we have all these former presidents and statesmen agreeing that there's something really fundamentally wrong. And now that we've stabilized the country, let us reform the constitution to ensure effective and efficient development.
Very well. That's very laudable. And just like you've taken us through it, I'm sure this is not really new because all of us have heard them talk about it this way.
Right.
From 2011, we started having the discussion on constitutional review. 2011.
Yeah.
Under the late Atta Mills, as I indicated.
Right.
We spent about $6 million of the taxpayers' money from the public purse to fuel the activities of the Constitutional Review Commission.
Right.
They came up with a report. 2011, 2012 till date. All these individuals we've talked about, they've had a chance, probably with the exception of J. Okufor, because he was before.
Right.
But after the commission submitted its report, all these individuals have had a chance. Some are even still in government.
Right.
What is it? Why is it that they keep talking about this, the need for a constitutional review, but when it comes to really committing to ensure that the constitution is reviewed, you don't get them?
Power is sweet. Power is very, very sweet. You know, I mean, once you get into office, you find that power is sweet. But then coming to the question,
yes,
you know, at the time that the Constitution Review Commission was doing its work, I was fortunate, you know, to have worked briefly with the commission.
Right.
And I went around with the commission to many regions, and so I've been very passionate in following the work of the commission until it ended.
Yeah.
And if there is one person who has been consistent in his position that he doesn't see the need for a comprehensive reform of the Constitution, I would say it is our current president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo.
Okay.
I mean, he told the commission that he was not in support of a comprehensive reform of the Constitution. And so when he became president, I mean, he has stuck to his ground that there is no need for a comprehensive reform. But before he became president, from the 2011 at least to 2016, the question is, what happened? And we know that former President Atta Mills died in office.
Yeah.
And then former President Mahama came into office.
Yeah.
They created the Constitutional Review Implementation Committee to now draft the proposals to submit to Parliament.
Yeah.
And then they did. And so in the course of their work, then some people, I think Kweku Azar, yes, you know, who was not very happy with the process due to many technical reasons, took the matter to court.
Right.
And his lawyer at that time was now the current Attorney General, Godfred, Honorable, Godfred Damida Labi. And then they brought the process to a halt.
Right.
And so by the time the courts really resolved the matter, it was very late getting to the 2016 elections. And so the time or the window now for the government, the then government now to proceed, had closed. And so one cannot really fault Mahama for saying that he didn't commit to it. He created the committee to proceed with this, and then the matter was taken to court. And I am not surprised also that those who stopped it, once they got into office, as I said already, the current president says that he doesn't support a comprehensive reform. Right. And his Attorney General is the one who led that process in court. And so I'm not surprised that they have not actually proceeded with it.
Okay.
But looking at the various calls that have come now, and then also in recent, we've heard from former President Mahama saying that he is still committed to comprehensive reform. And thankfully, also haven't heard from now Vice President Bawumia saying that he is committed to some aspect of the reform. I believe the time has come for us now to once again draw the attention that the process that was started, this is the time for us to be committed to it, because our democracy is sinking. Our democracy is collapsing. From the Economist Intelligence Units, their recent report shows that our democracy has declined to a point that we've not seen during the past 10 years. Afrobarometer is telling you that our democracy has declined to the point that many people have lost faith and confidence in the Constitution, to the point that, and this is very serious, as a 2023 report from Afrobarometer, to the point that now the number of citizens, or the percentage of citizens who even want to see an overthrow of the democratic regime, have increased from 12% in 1999 now to about 30%. Can you believe that?
In other words, 30% of Ghanaians believe that there should even be an overthrow of the Fourth Republic.
According to the Afrobarometer Round 9 survey. And that, I have checked again just to be sure, not even 30.4%. They were asked the question, just for the sake of clarity. And then let me read the question that they were asked. Afrobarometer posed the question. There are many ways to govern a country. Would you disapprove or approve of the following alternatives? The army comes in to govern the country. And 30%, that's 30.4%, said we either approve or strongly approve. And this is very, very scary. This is very worrying.
It's alarming, yeah.
Very alarming. So that came even before the recent reports from the Economist Intelligence Unit telling us that our democracy has declined again. And so many of us believe that the time to reform the Constitution is now, to give hope to a new era of development, to build a more developmental Constitution that gives hope to the current generation. Because the Constitution that we have, from all the honorable persons whose views I've mentioned, there is certainly something wrong with the Constitution. It cannot lead us to the promised land that we always to see. And unless we reform it now, we may be heading towards a very, very unpleasant crash.
In fact, if you are a passionate Ghanaian at this stage, you should be worried.
You should be very worried.
Because if you have 30.4% of those that were surveyed, obviously Ghanaians, saying that they will prefer a military regime to this, then you should know that our democracy is not in its good state, and something really needs to be done.
Certainly.
The interesting thing has to do with you mentioning and being part of the Constitutional Review Commission, engaging His Excellency Akufo-Addo, and he creating the impression ab initio that he's not interested in the review. Now, today we have snippets or instances where he comes to say that we need to review the Constitution in some aspect. Today we have his vice president, who has been acting as president a few times, coming to say that when he becomes president, he will commit to the Constitutional Review Commission. Today you have also brought to our attention the fact that when the Atamils left office, John Mahama took over. There were some court processes that barred or prevented him from pursuing it. Today he comes to say that he is committed to it. And I'm taking time to talk about all these individuals, particularly the president, the vice president, and the current, the former president. Because in line with 2024 general elections, they are the forerunners. The question is, if today we are all agreeing or crying for a constitutional review amendment to be done, with your experience, your background, and the fact that you were exposed through the workings, if we hear these individuals telling us that, give us the nod and we are going to review the Constitution, which of them should we really be confident to say that indeed, if we do give the nod, they are going to be committed to it?
I think that is a very tough question.
I know.
But on the facts, if you look at the facts on the ground, and what former President Mahama says, he's committed to a comprehensive review. And then current Vice President Dr. Bawumia says he's committed to reviewing some aspect of it, not comprehensive.
Not comprehensive.
And what many of us are calling for is a comprehensive review of the Constitution. At least for Vice President Bawumia to say he's committed, at least to reviewing some aspect, I believe that maybe if we engage more with him and then we present the data for him to look at, maybe he'll have a change of mind and then join former President Mahama to say that he is committed to a comprehensive review of the Constitution. But if really we are to look at what these two honorable gentlemen have said, then one can say that former President Mahama really has come home to actually made a very strong point that he is committed to a comprehensive review.
So it is also not a case of, at a point, a certain government was not committed to continuation, but it was that there was a legal issue
exactly
that prevented the erstwhile administration from pursuing
exactly.
it. Okay, that is fine. That's perfect.
Right.
Now, there has been some issues, specific issues regarding the reformation of the Constitution.
Right.
One of it, and it started right from His Excellency John Ejekum Kufuor's time, and he said it when he was just about leaving office, has to do with the tenure of office.
Right.
He's saying that we should move from 4 years to 5 years. What would be the difference?
Oh,
first off, do you agree to that?
I agree absolutely. I mean, I agree totally with this suggestion. Let's look even at the Economist Intelligence Unit, the reports that they came up with.
Yes.
That there are 4 countries that have performed better than Ghana.
Right.
Namely Mauritius, Cape Verde, we have Namibia, and then South Africa. All these countries have either 5-year tenure or unlimited tenure of office for their executive. And for a developing country, frequently changing your leadership every 4 years doesn't help to create stability. It doesn't also help to create the continuity in office. In fact, across Africa, there are 54 countries. It is only Ghana and Nigeria that conducts elections every 4 years. Only Ghana and Nigeria.
Really?
Yes. So out of 54 countries, only 2. And all the rest is either 5 years or more. The bottom line is that a developing country cannot afford to waste its resources on short-term elections every 4 years and then hope to achieve transformation of the economy. Industrial transformation and all that requires medium to long-term planning and commitment, not short-term. At the same time, even if you look at globally, if you look at the East Asian countries, you won't find a single country out there that practices a 4-year tenure of office like we have. Sometimes some people say that, well, if you look at America, the president is elected 4 years and then he goes. I say, well, look at America where power actually resides, within the Senate. In the Senate, it's a 6-year kind of term. But here we are talking about a developing country, and there is consensus among governance experts that for a developing country to achieve transformation, you need some level of long-term stability to do that. And so if you have a country that is practicing 4-year turnover, there is no way that you'll be able to create that stability. You will not be able to attract investors, to come in and then help you to engage in industrial transformation. And once again, even if we go back to the achievement of Kwame Nkrumah, if Kwame Nkrumah had governed under our 4th Republican Constitution, there is no way that he would have been able to achieve all the things that he achieved. Because Nkrumah was in power for 15 good years at the end of the day, not this kind of 4-year tenure of office. So the tenure of office for a developing country, once again, for a developing country like ours, it is not conducive for development. And all our former presidents have made a point, from former President Kufuor to former President Mahama, that, come on, the 4 years that you have, we spend about 1 to 2 years trying to form the government. And so virtually you have 2 years to do something. We know that the last year is an election year. It's really meaningless. And so if you want to use democracy really to promote development, which never happened in the advanced countries in any case, you have to design the constitution in such a way that it will create room for some political stability and continuity.
Doug, do you think this argument of having a 4-year tenure move to 5 years, it will sync well with citizens, in the fact that, as we keep saying, he who executes with little, more is given. I think the sentiment is that even with the 4 years, those who have had a chance to lead us have not proven to us that indeed they have done much with the little in the 4 years. Why then do we have to extend it so that if it is about corruption, we are now telling them that you have 5 years to relax and engage in corrupt practices? If it is about mismanagement of the public purse, you have 5 years now so you can relax and then engage in it. In other words, if you are doing 5 years,
right,
then, and if it's still going to be 2 terms, then you have 10 years instead of 8 years.
Yeah.
How do we convince listeners? How do we convince viewers? How do we convince Ghanaians that, look, 4 years, yes, we've not convinced you very well, but you give us more years?
Right. You know, the tenure of office is only one aspect of the many things that we are calling for a change. You know, so it is not a constitutional reform just to put in a change in the tenure of years and then that's it. So the tenure of years is only you know, one of the things that that we are pushing for. And in any case, citizens are looking for a transformation of the economy.
Yeah.
But what governance experts also know is that the 4-year actually creates a disincentive for certain governments to pursue big transformational projects because you won't be able to finish within the 4 years. So the 4 years is kind of a tenure of office that supports the growing of tomatoes, plantain, cassava, I mean, gardeners. You know, those things that you can show to the voters within a short time. So that at the end of the day, come 4 years, you can tell them that, come on, I planted tomatoes. Now I've been able to harvest a lot of tomatoes.
I can even bring it to the ministry and sell it to you.
Exactly. So it's some kind of a plantain, you know, or plantain kind of tenure of office. But to be serious in transforming development, and we've had the advice even from our international development partners like the IMF, that if you really want to transform the structures like the civil service, you want to create an effective bureaucracy, you need a medium to long-term kind of period to do that. And so this doesn't happen within 4 years. Of course, I understand that the majority of the citizens are not experts when it comes to the creation of institutions. But it is important also that someone will have to take up the duty to educate them about why there is a need really to create a viable constitution that can really promote development. Because the 4 years, and Ghana is not alone in the global, you know, community of countries. You have over 54 countries in Africa. You alone, you have the short term 4 years, and others are bypassing you. You are crying. You go to even AFCON, those who qualify, and then they say there are some free spaces, even that one you don't qualify. And then you come home, you cry, because there's something fundamentally wrong about the tenure of office.
That's true. That's true. I think I agree with you. I agree with you on that. There's one other thing I also want us to look at, and that has to do with appointments of heads, particularly to these anti-corruption institutions. And for me, one of the anti-corruption institutions that if we are able to build very well, we don't need any other anti-corruption institution, has to do with the Auditor General's Department. I mean, it is the key. We don't need special prosecutor, we don't need whatever. It is just strengthen the Auditor General's Department. Now, how do we ensure that the heads, in other words, having an Auditor General, and then the Attorney General's Department, these are individuals that are appointed, one, independently. When I talk of independently, I'm talking about devoid of executive influence. And then two, they are able to execute their duties independently.
I think I agree with you totally that if we really want to fight corruption in this country, it is important that the anti-corruption agencies are independent. And this is one area that we see even our sitting president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, agreeing with us. And this was 27th July 2015, when he stated that he agrees with Dr. Parkwesi Indom's assessment that whoever wins the office of the president should separate the Attorney General's...
2015, that's before he became president.
Before he became president.
Okay, good.
You know, should separate the Attorney General's department from the office of Minister of Justice so that we can have an independent Attorney General who, at the end of the day, will be committed to fighting corruption. Within the Constitution, we already know that the office of the Auditor General is supposed to be an independent one. But how can we make it more independent? Once again, history can lead us there. for the first time in our Fourth Republic, we had an Auditor General who was not appointed by the certain president.
Sure.
And here I'm talking about Mr. Daniel Domelevo.
That's right.
And we saw a transformation in how that office works. For the first time, we saw an Auditor General issuing surcharges, over 100 surcharges, and people began setting up.
That's right.
They were scared. They were afraid at the end of the day. It tells you that if we really have an Auditor General who is appointed by an independence commission or appointed by Parliament, not appointed by the president, then we are more likely to have a truly independent Auditor General who can do the job. At the same time, it also means that if we have an Attorney General who is appointed by an independence commission or appointed by Parliament, not appointed by an executive, we are more likely to make some kind of rules. And so these are the areas where we are calling for a constitutional amendment or review. And thankfully, although the certain president agrees with that, it's unfortunate that he did not actually commit to a comprehensive reform. And we hope that going forward, the time has come, because as we've already read from Afrobarometer, the Economist Intelligence Unit, things are not looking very good
at all. They are not looking good.
Yeah.
One other aspect has to do with the appointments, which we went through. Now, if you look at the powers given to the president in making appointments, not only does he have the freedom to appoint whoever and as many as he wants. The effect of it is that it is going to affect our public purse. In recent times, we've heard politicians who want to take leadership role promising us of the number of appointments they want to make. Some say they'll make 30, 40, 50, what have you, and all that. Currently, what do you think we should do in line with constitutional amendments as far as appointments are concerned?
Appointments, once again, happily, Alice, we have the view of the certain vice president and then the former president, all in support that they will review the powers of the president when it comes to appointment. I mean, why should we have a president appointing all chief executives of our state enterprises? Why should we have a president appointing all chief executives or director generals or heads of our public agencies? Why should we have a president appointing all board members of our public enterprises or agencies? Are those agencies not competent enough to know who is qualified and who is not qualified to do the job? And so at least there is some kind of consensus that it is important to review the powers of appointment of the president when it comes to appointment of our chief executives and our board members for public organizations and then enterprises. And so there, at least there is some consensus in that direction. And I'm happy about this.
Looking at being an expert and governance expert, and looking at the current situation we have as a country, what will you propose if we are capping appointments? What will you propose to be the ideal number of ministers, cabinet ministers that we need in transforming Ghana?
Well, in terms of the ideal number, there is no blueprint, anywhere that anybody can use to say that, well, we need to cap it at 50, we need to cap it at 40, we need to cap it at 30. The most important thing is for all stakeholders to sit and then to agree on the critical ministries that we really need in order to govern this country. Once there is consensus towards that kind of regard, it will lead us closer now to knowing or having some kind of a rough idea about how many ministers that we need. Because in any case, I mean, if we look at the history of this country, when we created the first parliament and then the executive, we had a 32-member parliament. And here I'm talking about the 1946 to the 1951 parliament. There were only 32 members in there. But they made the biggest jump in terms of economic, in terms of the development of our per capita income from around 1,400 to 1,800. And they were made up of members from the public service, They were made up of also elected municipal chief executives who were not elected on partisan basis in any case. They were also made up of some members elected by the National House of Chiefs. In total, they were 32. And yet they were able to perform a lot. They were able to achieve a lot in terms of economic transformation. But then later on, when they left the scene and only the political parties took over, then things started declining, even long before Nkrumah was overthrown. So I think the most important point is that if you bring the stakeholders together and then we agree on the critical sectors or areas of the economy that we really need in order to govern this country, we will be closer to some agreement about the number of ministers that we need to cap within the constitutional review framework.
That's right. Doug, there are a number of messages that have started coming in, but there are also some questions we need to exhaust before we get to the viewers, their comments. I want us to briefly look at the system we are practicing, the governance system we are practicing. We have the presidential system, we have the parliamentary system. The 92 Constitution, it provides the presidential system. Now, what is the difference between these two systems? And in this current state, Ghana's current state, which of these two systems will you propose if we are to amend the Constitution?
That's a very interesting kind of question that has generated some debate for some time. I remember that the parents' majority leader, I mean, who has just been, he's now a former.
He's a former, you know, because I just got information too.
Honorable Osechi
Mensah,
so I mean, has been strongly advocating that Ghana needs to go back to the parliamentary system of democracy or the parliamentary system of government. In the parliamentary system, you know, you have a member of parliament who campaigned within his constituency, got elected as a member of parliament, and then his own colleagues in parliament have approved that he becomes the prime minister. So at the end of the day, the advantage of that is that you don't have a president who necessarily goes around the entire country campaigning, spending money, mobilizing resources, and then doing campaign everywhere at the end of the day. So it leads to a reduction in the cost of expenditure of the one who emerges eventually as the prime minister.
That's right.
Now you compare it now to, so that was the system that was practiced when Nkrumah became prime minister. In fact, he was the first prime minister from 1952 until 1960, until he changed the system to the presidential system in 1960 at the end of the day. You know, so that system was found to be very effective because the prime minister or this member of parliament who now becomes first among equals in parliament has been elected as prime minister. You are in the house. You are part of the lawmaking process. You have listened to all the evidence and then all the arguments. And then you know the strengths and weaknesses of the law that you are going to make. So you don't sit at the Flagstaff House for now MPs to make the law and then they bring it to you and they say, I will not sign. Or I will sign, as we are seeing currently with some of the laws that MPs have taken to Flagstaff House. And also that system is one that is seen as a more effective system of getting the leader to participate in the lawmaking process and in the governance process of the country. Compared to the presidential system where you have one person who is elected by a party to be the presidential aspirant and you go around the entire country campaigning and then you are elected as the president. As I said, the disadvantage is that one is very costly for the president. You have to mobilize money from everywhere. And when you win, you have to now satisfy all those who contributed to it. And then the prime ministerial system too, usually the term of office is unlimited. So long as you perform very well, your colleagues are going to continue to elect you or nominate you for the prime ministerial position. And so you are committed to doing very well because you know that so long as you do well, they are going to support you. But if you don't do well, then they can pass a vote of no confidence in you in parliament and then get you out at the end of. But with the presidential system, you can't just do that and then just get rid of the president easily like that.
I get you. Look, there's one other interesting area I want us to look at, and that has to do with local democracy. Through the MMDCs. It is one thing that is of really, really interest to me. But before we get there, let's go through some of the messages because they are really piling up. This one says, still, the constitution have problems because it is still to chop money. We need total overhauling. And this from Awini Augustine from Kasua. This one says, I wish ex gratia for Article 71 office holders will be scrapped. Let's do away with animal kingdom in which a group of people are more important than others.
Right.
This from Echo Emmanuel. Hi, Mr. Host. Good evening and thank you for hosting my godfather. Okay. He has done a lot for me and many others. We need to reduce the powers of the president. Reducing the powers of the president is crucial for upholding democracy, democratic principles, ensuring accountability, and preventing authoritarian tendencies. It fosters a more inclusive governance system where power is distributed across multiple institutions, promoting stability and transparency in the country's political landscape. This is from Belsite Daniel, a former student of Dr. Daniel. Good evening, Mr. Wilson. My name is Rash Chacha from Yape in the Central Gunja. The Constitution vividly needs a review because the layman suffers a lot under this Constitution than the politicians. Some politicians declare war in Ghana and are still working freely without anything happening to them. Some are also embezzling the nation and are still working freely too. But let a poor man pluck someone's plantain. He will be jailed for years. Why? Good evening, Mr. Wilson. I am William Bonner. Whilst I may agree with Dr. Apia and others that the tenure of office for president should be increased, a mere increased bar, commitment, and devotion of leaders may not yield the desired development we seek. The Nasingbe dynasty of Togo, the Obians of Equatorial Guinea, the erstwhile Bongos of Gabon enjoy a relatively higher tenure of office, but developments in these countries are nothing to write home about. Whilst calling for an increased tenure of office, we should not lose sight of that fact that it has tyrannical and autocratic tendencies. That's an interesting one. You people are doing great work. President Atamils and Mahama were indeed having the interests of the nation at heart. But it's quite unfortunate they didn't complete their work. Constitutional review has been a strong demand for the good citizens of Ghana. We hope Mahama comes back again to review it for us. Ali Omar Seidu, okay, from KNUST. Good evening. The MPP has planned to hide behind the courts to disqualify JDM from the general elections. Please let the NDC be okay. All right, thank you. Office of the Auditor General or Ghana Audit Service and not Audit General's Department. See Article 1871 and 188 of the Constitution. Okay, it's not so clear. I want 3 key appointments to be neutral, not by the President. First is the EC chairperson. Second is the Chief Justice / Supreme Court judges. And the third one is the IGP. I absolutely agree with this. This is from Alaji Bello from Akwitia. Dr. Daniel Appiah's submission reflects not only expertise, but also unwavering commitment to the principles of justice, fairness, and democratic governance. His comprehensive approach in addressing the complex issues surrounding constitutional reforms should be considered by leadership in Ghana. This one says, if a national development plan is in place, I'm sure the 4 years will be good. See some of our housing, hospitals, schools, factories, including roads are half completed, laying in the bush. More are coming, but I want us to pause here. We'll come back to the messages. Right. Now, on the issue of tenor, right, there are those who have a fantastic opposing views, right, which to a large extent makes sense. The issue has to do with national development plan. Right. Whether or not if we don't have national development plan, Doc, don't you agree that we can have someone being in office for about 20, 30 years and it will amount to nothing?
The issue about national development plan is quite a dicey one. And if you are practicing a democracy, a multi-party democracy, then you need to carefully also think about the implications of that system, which is a multi-party democracy, on the one hand, and then on the other hand, having some independent group of persons crafting or designing a national development plan and giving it now to the elected government to say implement it.
Yeah.
I hope you are getting the point.
I get it perfectly.
You know, so here you have citizens who have elected the government to say, we've listened to you, we've listened to your manifesto, we've listened to your plan, we think that you are the best to lead us in this development process. And once the person now gets into office, now we tie the person's hand and we say, oh, okay, there is another group of experts out there. They are supposed to make the development plans and then give it to you. So if you look at the history of national development planning, this is a system that emerged in centralized systems, authoritarian regimes, not in multi-party democratic regimes.
Yeah.
And so whilst there is a desire of some people that, yes, we need a national development plan out there to guide us, I say that for me, the whole constitution is a national development plan.
Right.
The whole the directive principles of state policy direct us as to what needs to be done. What has been lacking in making the constitution effective is the fact that the checks and balances on the executive is almost non-existent.
Right.
Because the executive is appointing the referee, is appointing the assessors, and is appointing almost everyone.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the appointees who are put in government have no fear that if we do not use the resources and the authority given to us very well, we have some independent kind of persons who are coming to assess us or prosecute us. And so we need to strengthen the checks and balances and then make the constitution the overriding development plan. As I said, the issue of national development plan is very important. I think it was about 2 weeks ago when I listened to a member of the National Development Plan from Singapore.
Okay.
And there, the importance role of the National Development Plan in Singapore is assessment of development projects. And so they go around assessing the performance of the public sector agencies, and they appoint independent members into the commission, their National Development Planning Commission. That's not the name, but it's a similar one, to assess the performance of ministries, assess the performance of agencies. And those that have not done well, there is pressure brought to the leadership to resign, or they have to really account for why they have not performed well. In Ghana, you ask yourself, who or which agency is responsible for assessing the performance of public sector organizations?
That's right.
And then there is none.
There's
the
none.
NDPC is supposed to do that. In the constitution, it has been given that power or authority, but it has not been exercising it. So if we are to strengthen the NDPC, one area that we need to strengthen it is to make that NDPC an independent assessor of the performance of public sector agencies. And I believe that was one of the reasons why our late president, Atta Mills, now took the power of planning, development planning, from the former Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning and gave it to the NDPC.
Right.
Because the role of the NDPC as an assessor of development will be more effective and more in line with democratic ethos and practice than giving some authority to the NDPC to make plans and give it to an elected government to say, implemented, because the history of national development plan, as I said, did not really emerge from a democratic kind of regime. So if you really want to practice democracy, then we need to know how to design the system to really make it work.
Just briefly, do you agree to the reforms, the proposals that in line with NDPC, the composition of the membership? Do you think this composition will give that independence that we are talking about to NDPC?
In the first place, putting the NDPC under the office of the president is a wrong approach. It doesn't give the NDPC the independence to function. And so we saw that when the former president or when the former government lost power.
Yes.
Now, PV Obin and all the commissioners went to the presidency to handed over to resign.
Work they did, nobody knows what has happened to it.
I don't know what happened to it. They resigned. And so placing the NDPC under the presidency certainly is the wrong approach to take.
I agree.
We need an independent National Development Planning Commission, but not performing the function of development planning, but then performing the function of development assessment, and then giving us an independent assessment of our development process.
Right.
And the NDPC has also been given some authority that if you realize that an agency has not performed creditably or used the resources given to them very well, you have the authority to even place or request for an embargo to be placed on their budgetary allocation. a fantastic authority. So if you have an independent agency that can have that kind of agency, that you, Ministry of Finance, we've given you money, you've not used it well. Ministry of Education, you've not used the money very well. Unless you account for it or you retrieve monies that have been embezzled or misused, we are not going to approve your next budgetary allocation. That is certainly going to bring some kind of sanity in the system.
Perfect.
So yes, placing it under the office of the president, as I said, is certainly a wrong way to go. It wouldn't give the NDPC any kind of independence. And I agree with all those who are calling for a more independent commission that will be in charge of monitoring and assessing our development progress.
Doc, our time is almost up.
Right.
Now, can you touch just briefly on the local governance system? Because if you have the opportunity to look at the Act, it tells you that if the local governance system, as we have in this country, we are practicing it per what we have put in the books, development will really accelerate in this country. The issue of partisan MMDCs as against non-partisan MMDCs. Right. How do you resolve this issue?
Emma, for a developing country, once again, we need to look at ourselves as a developing country.
Yeah.
You know, America recently, just in the past few months, about 2 months or so, they elected their mayors for the various local governments. And you know, do you know that over 95% of the mayors were elected on non-partisan basis? The rules out there, and this is the United States of America that we are talking about. For nearly 200 years, they have created a system of local government where mayors are supposed to be elected on non-partisan basis. Okay. It is now that gradually now they are bringing in partisan politics into their local government system. The point is this: for a developing country, it is not everything that you use partisan politics to do.
Right.
I agree with all those who are calling for a non-partisan election of MMDCs. We shouldn't say that once armed robbers have entered your house, you don't want armed robbers to come in. Once they've entered your house, then allow them now to steal and take everything away. No, we have created a system that we want it to be non-partisan, just as we have it in the United States, and they've practiced for nearly 200 years. The point is to be committed to enforcing the rules. And so I agree perfectly with all those who are saying that the system should be non-partisan. And it is not just some few people. We have over 70% of citizens who are saying the system should be non-partisan. And I think if we respect democracy, let us listen to the views of the over 70% of the citizens.
Look, I wanted to stress you a bit more, but our time is fast spent.
Right.
The interesting thing is that there are so many messages coming in, and some are also requesting for a part 2 of this episode. And so what we are going to do is we will, after this show, we'll have a conversation and see if it will be possible for us to have a part 2 next week.
Right.
And then we can exhaust further the other areas that we've not been looked at. But let me just quickly go through 1 or 2 more. The other messages, you keep them coming. If we're able to have a part 2 next week, we'll talk about it. But good evening, host, and good evening, Dr. Pia, who is my lecturer and my game changer. Please, in terms of corruption, to what extent would an amendment of the Constitution have on its prevalence in our constitutions if attitude of the citizens are not worked on? For me, I am of the view that patriotism has declined massively. Citizens now work for their party's interest rather than that of the country. So it must be looked at. This is from Ernest Sosu. I started talking about constitutional review not now. I don't agree with increasing the tenure of office for president in Ghana. This will create more room for mismanagement and corruption. We should consider the following. Declaration of assets, enforcement of laws against corrupt leaders, mismanagement of public funds, ex gratia, accountability, etc. OSP, the name didn't come. Now this one says, OSP should be deleted with immediate alacrity. What we need as a country is the power to change things. What the Bank of Ghana is doing is like a tenant asking for something to pay a month's rent, and at the same time having workers on site putting up a building elsewhere, and none can challenge. This is from Nana Awatwe. And then this one says, Dr. Pia has made some good points in this argument of prolonging the term of office beyond 4 years. And we would appreciate if he can give us something specific and why? Doc, the messages keep coming.
Right.
But as I said, I am going to, we will have a conversation as to whether or not we can have a part 2 of it.
Right.
Fortunately, my producer has signaled me that we can go an additional 5 minutes. So, Doc, these are some of the questions that have come.
Right.
Now, there are others who are making an argument that there shouldn't be an extension of tenure. But there's one particular one which is of also interest to me, which talks about how constitutional amendments can help fight corruption in this country.
Okay. So I think we have talked a lot about how the amendment of the position, the appointment of the Attorney General certainly could help fight corruption in this country. And as even our sitting president agrees with us, only that he didn't, walk the talk.
The talk, that's right.
That we need an independent Attorney General. And also that certainly will be a game changer. At the same time, too, we've also seen in the short history under this current government that we had an Auditor General who exercised the powers of censure because he was not appointed by the president. That's Mr. Daniel Demelovo.
Yeah, that's right.
And so reforming the constitution to take away that kind of power from the president certainly is going to also be another kind of game changer. So at least these 2 critical areas certainly can go a long way in helping us, to make headway in the fight against corruption. As to whether or not we should go a parliamentary system of democracy, I think it's a bigger debate that maybe we can have another day. Because if we look at all the countries that are ahead of us, at least in the Economist Intelligence Unit's report from Namibia, Cape Verde, South Africa, Mauritius, all of them are practicing some kind of proportional representative democracy, apart from Mauritius, where even you can lose parliamentary elections in Mauritius and still be appointed into their parliament. They appoint 8 best losers. So you go into the election and you are not very afraid. You can lose and then still find yourself. And that is democracy. That's the beauty of democracy. And so it is very, very important, as others have rightly pointed out, that we critically look at the appointing powers of the president, particularly in the areas of anti-corruption. And then we will be able to make a lot of headway. And that is also why I do not really side with our vice president when he says that he will just look at only some few areas like local government and in Article 71. I think we need a comprehensive reform of the Constitution and not just some selected areas. That wouldn't have much effect.
In talking of fighting corruption, there's one other institution which we have 3 arms of government, the legislative arm, the executive, and the judiciary. Indeed, we've always said that the judiciary is supposed to be the last resort. Now, the question is, currently, in terms of appointing Supreme Court judges, we don't have a limit. We don't have a cap. So a president can decide the number of Supreme Court judges to appoint and have. What would be the proposal if we are talking of amending the Constitution?
Well, I am not a lawyer. But once again, from the knowledge that I gained from the Constitutional Review Commission's work, there is, a large body of, agreement, or that there is large consensus among lawyers and then judges that it is important that we cap appointment to the Supreme Court. And you can find that also in the Constitutional Review Commission's recommendation.
That's right.
Yes, and so and even if you listen to our former Chief Justice and many renowned Supreme Court judges, there is some kind of consensus that there is a need really to cap appointment to the Supreme Court. And if you see the case that involving President Donald Trump, former Trump in America, you look at how he's really battling it out there. It is all because they have a Supreme Court also where the executive cannot just interfere and manipulate appointment to the Supreme Court. There is a cap, there is a ceiling out there. So there is that kind of a true and independent separation of powers principle being practiced out there. If we really want to practice a democracy that delivers, it is important that we cap appointment to the Supreme Court.
Indeed, we surely have to talk about getting a second episode, and I promise we will do that. Doc, we are in an election year. In a sentence or two, as we wrap up, what would be your advice to our viewers as we prepare for 2024 general elections?
the advice for me to our viewers is that the future of this country is not about digitalization. It is not also about 24-hour economy. It is about comprehensive constitutional reform. If we fail to comprehensively reform the Constitution, I do not see a better or brighter future for this country. And so we need to put constitutional reform at the center of the debate. We have been here under the Fourth Republic for more than 30 good years. A lot of things have gone on. What we have not done is reforming the Constitution. And if you look at the statistics coming up, certainly if we don't reform, we are heading towards a crash and a big, big, big danger. So the time to reform it is now, and let's take reform seriously.
Doc, thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
so much.
Right.
Viewers, so this is what time will allow us, and we are also appreciative of our producers for extending the time for us. We'll have a conversation, and then we are sure of having Doc again for the next episode. All messages that have come in and still coming in, I promise you that we'll read them in due course, particularly at the next episode. This is your transformative program, Politics and Beyond. This coming Wednesday, there's going to be a repetition of this here on TV XYZ at 11 a.m. Coming Wednesday. So I want you to listen to it again. And let us prepare ourselves for the next episode. That will be next week, Monday. Till we meet again next week, it is your transformative program with your host, Emmanuel Wilson Jr. Good night.